Thanks for taking the time to watch or listen in to this sermon. Our prayer is always that God would use it to draw you closer to Himself and deepen your love for Jesus Christ. It's also our hope that this sermon would not be used to replace God's plan for authentic relationships in your life through a local church. If you aren't already a member of a local church, we just want to encourage you to step out in faith and join a church somewhere near you. Thanks again for checking out this sermon. We pray it's a blessing to you.
We're in a series called Hi, My Name is Wisdom. And we are looking at what wisdom is and who wisdom is. That's why it's Hi, My Name is Wisdom. In the book of Proverbs, wisdom is personified as if to be a person. We're told that wisdom sits at the high place, at the gate to the city, at the crossroads. That wisdom speaks out to all that pass by and at this heavy place of traffic on purpose in hopes that all would listen and walk in the right way. And that's encouraging. It's encouraging to know if as we're making decisions, as we're walking through life, that wisdom is not silent, is not cryptic, but that speaks loud from the high point, the city gate, and at the crossroads, where we come to those places and want to act in accordance with what God has in His will. Wisdom speaks. And so we started by laying a foundation of what wisdom is, and here's the definition we've been working with. Wisdom is the knowledge, skills, and abilities to do something right. It might seem obvious, but listen, often when we think wisdom, we think of just the knowledge piece. We think we are wise because we know something. But wisdom actually is the knowledge, skills, and abilities to do something right. Not just to know about something right, but that we'd have the knowledge, the skills, and the ability to do something, anything, whatever's before us, in a right way, which just in the definition of wisdom already shows us that there are wrong ways and right ways. And we're at church, so we're going to talk about that there is an ultimate right way, a righteous way, and it is found in God's way. It's not flippant, it's not subjective, but that God has created things to function and work in a way that He receives glory and we get good in walking on His path. And so we're working through some different subjects, asking wisdom to be a part of the conversation, as if wisdom showed up at your community group. And you went around in circles and brought up a subject and threw a topic in the middle of the conversation and said, okay, you share. Wisdom, what do you have to say about this topic? And so last week, I hope it was helpful. It was helpful for me even in studying and looking at wisdom on discipline, as wisdom spoke on what it means to be disciplined and have discipline. That is instruction and correction out of love to bring things into alignment. And it's good for us. In fact, the distance for pretty much everything in our life, from where we are to where we want to be, that distance, that path is called discipline. Today, though, we're going to ask wisdom to speak on a fun subject. Wisdom on riches. Riches. Money. Moolah. Cheddar. Bread. Cheese. Stacks. Listen, that wisdom has God has something to say about resources. And I know this happens, and I feel it even in preparing a message to speak in church from stage about money. I feel the tension on my own side because I know the tension that happens in a room because of many that have been charlatans. Many in the church, and in Timothy, Paul would speak to Timothy about those that only preach the gospel or only use God's word or name for their own financial gain. And because we've seen that in our day, we can kind of have some resistance about what is this going to look like when a pastor stands up and talks about money. I feel the same tension. I do. Because it's important to me on any subject we talk about to make sure that it's what God has to say and not what I have to say. And that it's really the truth and that wisdom would speak here in these places. So let's talk about riches, wisdom on riches. And let's start by saying this. Wisdom says that riches are beneficial but not most important. That riches are beneficial but not most important. Of course it's beneficial. It's nice to be able to have a couple dollars to buy food to eat. But that wisdom would say that it's not of most and highest value, unlike what we're told most often in the current culture and world, right? Because money brings power. And so oftentimes that's what we seek, that's what we're told. Like what you need to do is just work hard or go to college so you can get a job that pays a lot of money, because money, then you'll be secure, then you'll have status, then you'll be good as long as you have enough riches. Wisdom would say there's things that are much more valuable. In fact, wisdom speaks highly of herself and says that she's more valuable. Proverbs 3:13-15. Wisdom says this, that wisdom is more valuable than riches. Blessed are those who find wisdom, those who gain understanding, for she is more profitable than silver and yields better return than gold. She is more precious than rubies. Nothing you desire can compare with her. Pretty awesome. But there's something more valuable than what we see as value. Like, how do we understand the value of something? Oftentimes it's by how much it costs, how much it's worth, how much we'd spend. It has a connection to dollar amounts. But that wisdom says there's a value above what you can buy just with money, that wisdom is more valuable than riches. Wisdom would also speak on many other things being more valuable than riches, finances, resources. That a good name is more valuable. A good name. When your name is brought up, it's spoken of as integrity and character. Look at this. In Proverbs, what we got here? There we go. 22:1. A good name is more desirable than great riches. To be esteemed is better than silver or gold. That there's value in who you are and what you stand for, even more than what you have or what could be bought. Wisdom would say that a good name is more valuable, that righteousness is more valuable. Righteousness, right standing with God, and even right action. And we're set in the place of making the decision oftentimes on walking in a way of righteousness or something that would just get us money. Do I have integrity, or can my integrity be bought? Righteousness is more valuable. Better the poor whose walk is blameless than the rich whose ways are perverse. Now I want to be clear here. It doesn't say that you have to be poor to be righteous. You could be rich and blameless. It's just letting you understand the value of which is more important. That it'd be better to be blameless than it would be to be rich and perverse. That the righteous path, the right action, the right way is better to take than the way that just might bring income into our lives. You with me this morning? Awesome. Wisdom says that riches are beneficial but not most important, and that riches aren't to be trusted. Riches aren't to be trusted. You know this. But check this out in Proverbs 11:28. I got a lot of verses we're going to get through today as wisdom speaks a lot on finance. Those who trust in their riches will fall, but the righteous will thrive like a green leaf. But the righteous, the right standing with God, where we put our trust, that we trust in the Lord who has all things at his disposal. Everything is his as a resource. But that if we trust in things instead of God, we will fall and it will fail, and it will fail us. Because it can't come through. I love this verse. Well, it's kind of a love-hate thing. It's real. Watch this. Cast but a glance at riches, and they are gone. For they will surely sprout wings and fly off to the sky like an eagle. That's true. Like, that's why we don't put our security in it. Because in a moment, in a day, in a medical report, about the condition of where you're at, in an accident, in a stock crash, in a real estate crash. All of a sudden, what you've put your hope in and banked your future on can sprout wings and fly away. So that we wouldn't put our trust in anything that can be shaken or that can just fly off, but our trust would be in God. It's not wrong to have riches or even be secure in those things, but not to put our security in those things. Hope you're hearing what I'm saying. 1 Timothy 6:17. I'm going to have to unpack a little bit, but it says this. Command those who are rich in the present age, or the present world, not to be arrogant, nor to put their hope in wealth, which is so uncertain, but to put their hope in God, who richly provides us with everything for our enjoyment. Now, let me just backtrack for a minute to the beginning of this verse. Because we have a tendency to often read things and think it's somebody else that it's talking to. Don't we? Especially with a word like rich. Command those that are rich in the present world. Instantly we go, oh, I've seen rich, and it's not me. Everybody does that. Like you could talk to somebody that has lots of money, and you could be like, hey, command those that are rich, and they're like, I know a guy has bigger, more, greater. I know a woman that who is way wealthier than me, so rich can't be me. Rich is always somebody else. It is. And we constantly do that, and we gauge that. Let me just give you some quick statistics. Not a lot of them. I don't want to overwhelm you, but just a couple that you can find on globalrichlist.com. You can go ahead and put in your country. You can put in your income. If you make $25,000 a year, which is just around minimum wage at 40 hours a week, about that, you're in the top 2% of the world for income. Right? Automatically, I'm like, oh, dang, I have more than I thought I did. Right? All of us kind of are in that space. If you make over $32.5 thousand a year, you're in the top 1%. 1% of income on the planet. And if you start combining income at your house, if maybe you've been blessed, if there's like $100,000 that comes into your house in a year, you're at like 0.08% of the planet. And so we oftentimes don't think of ourselves as rich, but many of us are going to go home today and it's cold outside and we're going to turn the heat on. We're going to push a button on the wall. Like that's how we warm ourselves up. Boop, 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 boop. A lot of us are going to go home and push a button when we get there before we get into our house, and a door's going to open because we have a house for our car. Many people on the planet don't have homes. We have homes for our vehicles. Because God forbid that it would get cold or wet or dirty. And I'm not trying to beat you up, but just give you perspective. It's not wrong that you have, it's not wrong that you warm your house by pushing a button. It's not wrong that you push a button and can drive into your garage. But most of us have food that will spoil before we ever get a chance to eat it, and we're already going to overeat. And so some perspective would be helpful. That many and most of us in this room, by the standards of the world, are rich. And if you're in this place today and you say, like, that sounds great, but I don't have food, please come talk to me or one of the leaders and we'll make sure you have food today. But that there is a space that we kind of live in a comfort where we're in a bubble and we forget that we are massively and overwhelmingly blessed and rich. So when we hear these commands, they're not for somebody else. They're for us. Command those who are rich in this present world not to be arrogant, nor to put their hope in wealth, which is so uncertain. but to put their hope in God, who richly provides us with everything for our enjoyment. That's a cool verse too. That is not wrong that we actually enjoy the blessings that God gives us, but it is wrong if we have a wrong perspective of the fact that He's already blessed us. That we shouldn't put our trust, our hope in something that is a resource that will pass away, but we put our hope, our trust in God who resources His people. In fact, I don't have time to dive into it right now, but in Matthew 19, a rich young man comes to Jesus, asks Him what commands he should keep. Jesus rattles some off, and He says, okay, I've done all those, what else? Can I just tell you, like, you're setting yourself up? If you want to be comfortable, that's not what you ask Jesus. I hope we rather be righteous and walk in following after God and be brave enough to ask these types of questions. But God, I'm doing that. What, am I missing anything? God, is there still something else you want to work out in me? And He says, okay, well, you could go sell everything. Give what you get to the poor and then come follow me. And it says that the rich young man, his head went down and he walked off sad because he had great wealth. And Jesus goes on to say that it's difficult for those that are rich to make it into the kingdom of heaven. In fact, it's easier for a camel to go through the eye of a needle. And His disciples ask Him, like, is there any hope for anybody then? And He says, what is impossible for man is possible for God. But the idea is we get so comfortable and we get so secure we put our trust in, our hope in the security of riches, and we forget the one that has given us all things for our enjoyment. And that our money cannot save us. In Psalm, I believe it's Psalm 49, it speaks on not being too overwhelmed with those that have riches because they cannot redeem their own life with their money. That our Redeemer is Jesus Christ, not our pocketbook. It's beneficial, but not most important. And I'm going to get very practical, and I know that happens when we talk about something like finance, but I want to use some of the rest of our time to talk about getting riches, and using riches. How do we get resource, and how do we use that resource that God has given us? Getting riches is going to seem very practical because it is, but I hope we understand how to apply this. Getting riches. The first way to get riches is to work hard. I know it's simple, but it's true. In Proverbs 12, verse 11, it says this: those who work their land will have abundant food. Basically, what you have in the space that you're at, working hard and watch it produce something. But those who chase fantasies have no sense. You know, oftentimes the reason it's hard for us to make riches is because we seek the get rich quick kind of whim of the day. Like somebody posts something on Facebook about, do you know you can not ever have to work again starting next Tuesday if you just do what I tell you? Or we're like, I got to go quit my job and do this because by next Tuesday. I mean, when it sounds too good to be true, it almost always is. But too often we chase after fantasies because we want ease. In fact, one of our messages in this series, Wisdom, is going to speak on hard work, on what work looks like. But the first step to getting riches is being willing to work. And to just kind of the point B on that is work hard. The next point is not too hard. It says this in Proverbs 23:4. Do not wear yourself out to get rich. Do not trust in your own cleverness. That working hard is correct. That when you're working, do it diligently, but do not wear yourself out for something that can sprout wings and fly away. That doesn't hold in itself eternal value. But that have character when you are working and work hard with the energy that God gives you. but not to wear yourself out after gaining riches. In fact, in 1 Timothy chapter 6, there's this warning. It says, but godliness with contentment is great gain. Showing that godliness is more valuable than even riches, and to learn to be content with what we even have. For we brought nothing into the world, and we can take nothing out of it. But if we have food and clothing, we will be content with that. Those who want to get rich fall into temptation and a trap, and into many foolish and harmful desires that plunge people into ruin and destruction. For the love of money is a root. I have to clarify that. It's misquoted all the time. Is a root of all kinds of evil. Some people, eager for money, have wandered from the faith and pierced themselves with many griefs. That it's right to work hard. It's not wrong to gain an income based on your hard work. But if what I seek and my sole passion and my purpose and my focus is going after riches and gaining wealth for myself, then I'm greedy. And if that's my goal, I will sacrifice godliness in search for riches. So he starts off with godliness with contentment is great gain. That many people, and I've seen this, I've been pastoring for over a decade in different capacities. There's lots of things that can kind of take people different directions as they're longing to follow after God. Oftentimes it's loneliness and looking for a relationship. Also, I've seen this play out. That seeking after riches, that becomes the focus. Yeah, I know that I'm part of a good community, and I'm growing, and I'm following after God. I'm being discipled, and I'm learning to use my skills to glorify Him and for the good of others, but I can make a couple more dollars over here, so I need to just sacrifice my connection with the local body. And that's just an example. But it plays out often in our lives, and so it's not wrong to have and to use and to work hard, but that wouldn't be our sole focus of what we're here for. What a waste of life if that's all we're here for. Work hard, not too hard. The next one, stack slow. Stack slow. Proverbs 13:11 says this. Dishonest money dwindles away, but whoever gathers money little by little makes it grow. There's a principle of just like sowing and reaping and constants that happens in really every area of our life. It's like if you're trying to lose weight, don't try to lose 30 pounds tomorrow. But daily, start applying principles that would bring you to a place of seeing results in that space. And that with finances, we do the same thing. Like all of a sudden tomorrow, I'm going to blow up everything I know and just do everything all at once. When really it's a step by step in putting away. Most of us in the room 2 decades ago could have started doing this, and we would be in a different space financially right now. So let's start today. This isn't to beat any of us up, but to stack slow, to constantly be thinking of how do I regularly put away. Live small. Work hard, not too hard. Stack slow. Live small. Look at this verse, Proverbs 21:17. Whoever loves pleasure will become poor. Pretty straightforward. Whoever loves wine and olive oil will never be rich. That there is a sense of like many of us overextend ourselves because of pleasure. I need a certain type of thing. I need that. I deserve that. And you've heard the saying, you can't have your cake and eat it too. Like you could love wine and olive oil, but you just can't love money because you're going to have to use it to get wine and olive oil. And I'm not saying love money, but you won't be able to save money. Like that's the space that we get in, right? That there's this idea of if I could just work hard, not overdoing it, stack slow, and live small. Too many of us have like a lobster taste and a Big Mac budget. That's real. And so to either keep up with somebody else or to just to please our own flesh. We are doing the saying of pay now, play later, or play now, pay later. We rather have pleasure now, and then later we don't know how we're going to survive. Instead of learning to live smaller now and be able to have a margin, not only for your own ability to deal with emergencies that come, but that we can move in just a minute of how to use riches and what it looks like to be sacrificial and gracious and generous. And the reason I started with how to get riches and use riches, but before I use riches, is because many of us, I think, are already going to be on board with wanting to do what it looks like to glorify God and using riches, but we can't because we're not good at getting them. We're lazy, don't work hard, or maybe we don't plan to stack slow so that we have something to use. We haven't really disciplined ourselves to live small, and so we're actually living beyond ourselves. We're living bigger than our budget. In fact, I don't have it in my notes, but wisdom would say also in Proverbs that the borrower is slave to the lender. We know that. Buy something with a credit card today, pay it off for the rest of your life. Visa bill shows up and they don't let you off the hook. They keep adding money to what you owe them. In fact, oftentimes in our society, because we want to keep up with everybody and we worry about name brands and how do I appear, how do I glorify me, not necessarily how do I glorify God, that we will go beyond ourselves in that space and be paying things off after we don't even have them anymore. Right? Like we've thrown away the shirt we're still paying for. This is really awesome in here today. I know this is super practical and you came to hear about Jesus and that's all I want to talk to you about is Jesus. I realize sometimes that playing out what it looks like to follow after God in wisdom is something we also need. So what does it look like to work with the energy God's given us? To slowly use the resources given us to stack and to live small so that we can use our riches correctly. Listen, using riches. How do I use what God has given me in a way that glorifies Him? First, honor God. The whole thing is honor God. In everything, honor God. And oftentimes when I say this, let me just tell you before I read you the verse. Oftentimes we hear this and we think that, oh, he's going to talk about like tithes and offering. And of course I am. We're at church. But what I'm really talking about isn't just that. It's not like let's talk about a percentage. I'm talking about 100%. Like how do we honor God with everything that comes into our lives? And it just happens to include finance, so this week we're including it. Last week it included discipline. And moving forward, it'll be hard work, and it'll be our words, and it'll be fighting for justice. And using riches. First, we honor God. Proverbs 3, 9, and 10. Honor the Lord. And that word honor there is a word for like a weightiness. Give proper weight to the Lord. Honor the Lord with your wealth. The Bible would even tell us that the ability to even get wealth is from God. I love that. Everything we have the ability to do, like the gifts, skills, and abilities, the energy to bring any resource back, to produce anything good out of my life, all comes from God. And so that I would honor Him in everything because it's all from Him. So that we would honor the Lord with your wealth, with the first fruits of all your crops. And the first fruits means the best, the first that comes in. And what it really signifies is that I understand that all of this is from you, and I'm giving you back what is the best, but really I'm showing you that it's all yours because it's from you. It's a symbolism of all of this is yours. And it's a showing and a recognition of gratitude. Honor the Lord with your wealth, with the first fruits of all your crops. Now let me explain this. Then your barns will be filled to overflowing, and your vats will brim over with new wine. Okay, this is a verse that has often been turned into some sort of financial equation. that, okay, if I just write a tithe check or an offering check, then God's got to give me this overflow that I won't even know what to do with. First of all, you don't even have a barn or vats, but let's just... But that it's been turned into an equation, and it's been turned into a selfish equation instead of an understanding of like the whole premise of this is what it looks like to honor God. If we miss it and we say, oh, great, you finally got to the part about honoring self and where God has to honor me, then we actually didn't do it to honor God in the first place. So how could I ever expect that is God owes us nothing? In fact, in Romans, it would be said in the doxology, who's ever given to God that he should repay them? Like, who does God owe something to? Oh, you gave a little bit of what is already his back to him. Oh, wow. And I don't mean that to say that it's not important that we have a giving and generous heart. We're going to get to that and land on that. But just an understanding that everything is God's. And that's the first piece in perspective that we need to understand, that even the ability to create, well, oftentimes we think like, oh man, Pastor's just talking about how I got to give him some of my money so that I can honor God with it. I don't care about it. I don't care. I care for you, and I care that you understand who God is. But I'm not going around looking at everybody's giving and going like, I can't believe it. That's not the case. We don't do it to impress God or others, but that our generosity would come out of a place of honoring God with every area of our life, and that we wouldn't categorize it to not include an area, but that we would use every area to honor and glorify God. First and foremost, we would honor God. Second one, because I just want to be really practical, care for your family. And that does honor God. That's part of honoring God with your finances, is caring for your family. There is a verse that I'm about to read you that messes with me. It'll mess with you too. It's in 1 Timothy 5, in verse 8. It says this: anyone who does not provide for their relatives, and especially for their own household, has denied the faith and is worse than an unbeliever. That's pretty straightforward and hardcore. But I think it's okay to wrestle through these things, because all of us are going to realize when we miss stuff. When we open the Bible, you know what's going to happen? We're going to open it, and every time different people in the room deal with different things, and we're going to go like, oh, that's what righteous looks like. That's what walking in wisdom in that area of life looks like. Dang it. I was good at the other three, so I really kind of felt like the pastor was giving me a hug. Now I feel like he slapped me, and I don't know if I like him. Listen, that there's this area of provision that I work hard, but it's not so that I can stack up and just have a bunch for myself, but I work hard so that I can honor God and so that I can care for those that he's put under my supervision. That as I lead my family, one of the ways that I do that is by providing for them. And it would step out in this area. It's talking about specifically widows inside of the church, and that the church shouldn't be the one that takes care of them if they have a living family member. That if they have a living family member, it's on that family member first. And listen, it's going to get really big, really fast. You think like, okay, what does it look like to honor God financially and then take care of my family and even my relatives? And it gets really big. But if all of us are striving to do that, then all of us are carrying that burden, and it's not as heavy as you think. Honor God, care for family, share it generously. Share it generously. Generously. Give it away. Give it away. In Proverbs 11, 24 through 25. And I just want to say that coming up with this message, it's far from a rebuke. We have a very generous church. Tomorrow, you can still, if you're interested, we're going to pack, pray over, deliver, and pray over the families. The meals that you guys sponsored, which is like every holiday meal for Thanksgiving and probably also for Christmas, off of your generosity. But yeah, sometimes the Bible does confirm that we're on the right path. And sometimes it confronts the path that we're on. And so individually, we might be in different places, but as a church, we are generous, and we do care, and we do give, but I think we should always look at how are we doing it with it. Proverbs 11:24-25, I love this. It will speak to what it looks like to be a conduit of God's resources, not just a bucket. A conduit, not a bucket. One person gives freely, yet gains even more. Another withholds unduly, but comes to poverty. A generous person will prosper. Whoever refreshes others will be refreshed. But there is this principle in Scripture that God takes care of those that use what He's given them in a proper way. That when we understand it's God's, it's easier for us to be open-handed instead of closed-handed. If I think it's mine, then people have to wrestle things out of my hands when they're in need or when God asks. Maybe God, but if I understand it's not mine, it's all God's, everything, all of it, then I can be used to refresh others, and I don't feel like, well, what about me? I realize that God gives seed to the sower, that those that replenish are replenished, that those that are generous they prosper, and that the opposite is also true, that when we're stingy, it leads to poverty. It's really quiet in here today. It always is. Whenever you talk about somebody's money. Proverbs 22:9 says it like this. The generous will themselves be blessed, for they share their food with the poor. If I'm just being honest, when we often don't put ourselves in certain situations or circumstances because we don't want those situations and circumstances to confront our current space and comfort. And so from afar, we can go like, that's a good idea, but when you get in the mix, all of a sudden it has flesh. So to be generous to the poor sounds really cool, and we're like, yeah, we should. But when you walk with the poor, it gives you a real perspective. And we live in a community that there's a lot of need. In fact, in this room, there could be great need. And recently, just walk around and meet people that are on the street holding signs, or go downtown for a minute. As recently, there was violence in one of the homeless camps, and so many of the homeless camps have been shut down. And so the homeless that were sometimes downtown and then oftentimes at their camp are mostly just downtown and have set up camp on streets. And we oftentimes go like, oh man, that stinks. I'm never going to go down there now. And I would just say, obviously make sure you're safe. If you don't want to go by yourself or at certain times of the day, I get it. But don't just insulate yourself so much inside of your comfort that you're not exposed to the great need that there is around. And let's not pretend like it's somebody else's issue, as the church has been resourced to be a blessing and a light to the world around us. That when you go down and you walk down on those streets, you instantly are confronted with, what do I do in my heart right now? Do I judge that person and think like, how could they or why would they? Or do I have a heart of compassion that is moved to do what maybe I can do or maybe beyond what I can do? And if I'm just being real, I deal with having a pendulum that swings too hard, too fast. When I'm exposed to that, all of a sudden, I forget about everything else and just want to give everything away until I am one of the poor. And then in that space, I wouldn't have the ability to continue to bless in the way that we could. And so there's this place of finding, God, how do I do that in the greatest impact, in the greatest way, that I would live small in myself, that I would be able to start sacrificing, and most times it's not sacrificing, it's comfort, not need. That I would be able to start shaving these things off so that I could be a greater blessing in these places, so that others could be blessed in that way. And many times I think, well, yeah, but what if that person what? If you don't want to give somebody cash, give them a sandwich. What if they don't eat it? I don't know, that's fine. But I know that we're called to give it, and that we might not see a return this side of heaven, which would actually be the best return we could find. Proverbs 28:27 says it like this. Okay, wisdom, we hear you. Those who give to the poor will lack nothing, but those who close their eyes to them receive many curses. It's hard. It's hard because giving something that I feel like my own is hard. It's hard because I'm judgmental and I judge people in certain circumstances. And I give motive things instead of just understanding the need that's right before me. It's hard because it's easier to close my eyes than to open my heart. But we're called to something greater. We are children of the Most High God, and nobody outgives God, who is rich in mercy and grace, that all things are His, and that He continues to give to those that will walk out what He has given them to do in giving to others and blessing others. Stay with me for just a couple more minutes. I need the worship team to go ahead and come up. One thing about riches that I think are important for us to understand and to deal with is riches reveal our heart. Riches reveal our heart. There's other things that can reveal our heart too. But riches reveal our heart. They do. Matthew 6, Jesus is preaching the Sermon on the Mount. And he gets to an area where right after these verses, and we're not going to be able to get into it today, he talks about not worrying about things because God takes care of us, that we should seek first His kingdom and His righteousness. And all these things will also be added to us. But they are secondary, and we trust that our Father that is loving will make sure we have them as we do what is most important. Matthew 6, starting in verse 19, says this. Do not store up for yourselves treasures on earth, where moths and vermin destroy, and where thieves break in and steal. But store up for yourselves treasure in heaven, where moths and vermin do not destroy, and where thieves do not break in and steal. For where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. What's my focus? Earthly reward or a heavenly reward? What's my real value play? Is it a temporary view or an eternal view? What I give of something that is going to pass away. You know, in Luke chapter 12, there's a parable of the rich fool. And it says that he has great return on his harvest, and so much so that he says, what am I going to do with this? I need bigger areas to hold this stuff. I need a bigger barn and bigger space to hold all of this increase, and then I won't have to work. I'll be able to just kick back, and I'll just be able to live abundantly and not worry about anybody else, but I'll be good. And the Bible says in that parable that God speaks in the parable. It says, and then God said, you fool. Your life will be demanded of you tonight. And then who will enjoy all those things? That a misunderstanding of why we're blessed in the first place. We're not blessed so that we can kick back and put our feet up to build bigger spaces, but that's what we do. That's constantly what we're thinking of. Man, I need a raise so I can have more stuff. And the more we make, the more we spend. But having a perspective shift that the reason that I've been blessed with this at all is to be a blessing. That is, I've been given to be a giver. That generously has come in, that generously should go out. Where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. That reveals our heart, where our heart is placed. Is it in doing the will, the work of God and walking in wisdom? Or is it about me and greed and selfishness? Goes on to say, an interesting statement. The eye is the lamp of the body. If your eyes are healthy, and that word healthy means generous, your whole body will be full of light. But if your eyes are unhealthy, which is stingy, your whole body will be full of darkness. If then the light within you is darkness, how great is that darkness? But there's this understanding for Christians as we see what God has done and being rich in mercy and that everything He's blessed us with and given us, not just finances, but everything. That we understand that He's forgiven us, so we forgive greatly. We understand the mercy He's given us, so we extend mercy. We understand the resource He's blessed us with, so we bless others. That it's out of that proper perspective of how God has graciously given us all things for His glory and for our good, that we bless massively in all ways. And that the way we view things, your eyes being healthy or your eyes being stingy about your own stuff, about things around you, reveal a lot about what's inside. And lastly, says this: no one can serve two masters. Either you will hate the one and love the other, or you will be devoted to the one and despise the other. You cannot serve both God and money. The word serve there actually is an application more to being a slave to. That money is not wrong in and of itself. Is it a root of all kinds of evil? Yes, because many people that have gone after that as the primary focus, as the first seeking, have left the faith and found themselves in bad spaces. And that moment being a slave to money and riches instead of a slave to God, a slave to righteousness. That He is our master, He is our Lord. And one of the things that money does is it reveals who's Lord. It's just another area of our life that we get to decide, is God the Lord of everything? And for many of us, we'll be confronted in different spaces. In relationship, all of a sudden what we tend to do is we categorize things and we say, yes, Jesus is Lord. And then in the application of Jesus being Lord, we categorize. So we go like, yeah, Jesus is Lord here, so I give Him this thing here. But not here, here, and here. I'm the Lord of that, or it's the Lord of me. But that we would have full submission of all things to God. That it's not wrong that we work hard and we gain riches, but even in what we gain, we realize we gained it because God. And that we honor Him and give weight to Him with everything and all of it. And that we take care of the broken, the down, the out. That's what we're about. God came and saved us when we were His enemies. Dead, broken, far away. But that He extended grace, mercy, that He moved to us to bless us in an overwhelming way, not because we deserved it. And that's the problem when we're given, isn't it? When we see people that are broken or poor, we're like, yeah, but you don't deserve it because you made these decisions that got you here. Well, you don't deserve it. You don't deserve the good things that God has given to you, and neither do I. But He has anyways out of great love, and that we would extend that love in all ways. Go ahead and stand to your feet with me. I want to pray with us. We'll have a time of response. I know today's very practical on how to gain and get riches and how to use them. But sometimes honoring God and walking in wisdom is practical, very practical. So I pray that we would learn, that we would grow, that we would listen to wisdom's insight and encouragement. I also pray that we would be transformed more into the image of Christ, who humbled himself and gave everything. And that we would be givers and that we would be generous. Not to show off, not to earn, but to share what God has given us. There's nothing greater that God has given us than Jesus. There's no way to be right with God apart from a relationship through Christ. I'm going to pray with us, and after I'm done praying, we'll sing of God's goodness. We have a prayer team that's ready to pray with you. And someone's going to come up and talk to you about some different ways that you could respond today to what God's doing in your heart. God, we thank you for the opportunity to be here. God, help us to have a proper perspective and not to put all of our focus on what the world focuses on, but God, to be rich in mercy, rich in grace, rich in forgiveness, rich in generosity. Help us to be focused on eternal matters and not just the temporal. God, I thank you that you are here because you are faithful and you are amongst and inside of your people. God, I pray that you would move in mighty and miraculous ways that I know nothing about. I don't know what everyone is going through, but God, I pray that you would move, that you would bring peace in spaces of chaos, that you would bring healing in spaces of brokenness, that you would bring reconciliation. God, that you would bring clarity where there is confusion. That you would bring comfort to those that are broken. God, that you would bring challenge and a shaking up to those that are too comfortable. God, help us to love like you love. Help us to understand the love that you have given us through Christ. Help us to give like you give. God, we ask all of this in Jesus' mighty name. Let's sing together.